it's Anna here. Welcome back to my channel. Today is video 5 of my inner work video series, and we will be talking everything about inner child healing. And this is based on all the research that I've done, but also my own experience. Inner child healing is a huge part of inner work, so it deserves its own videos. It is one of the most serious and profound forms of inner work because it will help you face your fears and insecurities that were created in childhood that are most likely running the show in your life right now as an adult without you even realizing. I have divided this video into 5 parts. First, we will define who the inner child is. Then we will discuss why inner child healing is so important. Then we will discuss signs you need to do inner child healing, common inner child wounds that we all tend to have, and how to actually do it. And finally, how to know that healing is working. So let's start with defining who the inner child is. The inner child is basically just a part of your personality that has stored all the emotions, feelings, memories, needs, patterns, and behaviors that we have preserved from our childhood. So it's basically a child residing inside of you. And we all have this pure aspect of the inner child, which is us when we feel silly, adventurous, curious, and joyful. But we also have a wounded aspect of that inner child, which are all the emotions that were suppressed in our childhood, and the part of ourselves that we have deemed unacceptable and unlovable because of our childhood. And I would go as far as saying that for most of the population, this wounded inner child is basically this feeling of thinking that we are unworthy and not good enough. So the pure inner child is this pure light that we are all born with. You know, when you see a baby, they are this pure bright light. And the wounded inner child is basically all of us adults playing small and dimming our light. So now let's discuss why inner child healing is so important. And basically, recent research in neuroscience has discovered that the first 7 years of a child's life are absolutely crucial in terms of brain development. Between 0 and 2 years old, children are in what we call beta brain waves, and between 2 and 6 years old, they are in theta brain waves. Delta is what we go into when we are in a deep sleep, and theta is when we are in a meditative state like daydreaming or deep relaxation. And all this to say that this explains the expression children are sponges, because these brain states allow them to completely and literally absorb everything around them. And this is why babies and toddlers develop so quickly in terms of motor skills and speech, because they are observing everything, learning and imitating without even trying, without logic entering. These are also the states that hypnotherapists make you go into to rewire your subconscious mind and help you heal addictions and traumas. So in a nutshell, if you are currently having issues in your life, there is a big chance that you have absorbed unhelpful programming in your childhood. Because whatever you observe and learn in those early years gets shoved into your subconscious mind, and it basically runs the show without you even being aware of it. And the tricky part here is that it's not just big trauma that affects us, like sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. Sometimes it is much less severe repeated events that occur in our childhood that have a deep impact, or it could just be your interpretation of these events through your child lens. So for example, you may think that your sibling is getting more attention than you when it's not necessarily the case. But what matters is that you feel this way and it needs to be addressed. So all this to say, the issue is not necessarily the trauma itself, it's the fact that the emotions weren't processed and digested, and as a child, you were not able to make sense of it. And here I actually want to make 2 very important points. The first one is that inner child healing shouldn't become a blame game for our parents. And this is a theme that I'm seeing across social media where we have gone a little bit too far. It seems that we always go into extremes with everything. With this newfound interest and understanding of the importance of healing, and especially inner child healing, things are tending to go a bit too far where we blame our parents. But we need to remember that our parents did the best they could with what they had at the time. Our parents didn't have access to neuroscience research 30 years ago. They didn't have access to this importance of healing ourselves. This is new. So they were simply repeating the patterns that their own parents had passed down to them. But also, not all childhood wounds come from our parents. We were not raised in silo. We were also going to school. You know, where school actually has a big impact on us. I know that my brother, a lot of his trauma comes from a really bad teacher that he had when he was in primary school. So it can't just be about our parents. It's everything. It's, you know, the movies that we watch, the TV, all the programs that we watch, the school, everyone we were surrounded with, our friendships have a big impact on that as well. So it's not just our parents. I just want to make that very clear. It could also be that you absorbed wounds from your parents without them even trying. So for example, your mom might have been telling you how beautiful you were your entire life, but then you observed your mom having bad body image, where she was always on a diet and thinking that she was not beautiful, and that has an impact. And I also believe that we bring wounds from past lives and from our ancestral lineage passed down through our DNA too. And another important point that I want to make is that this newfound interest and understanding of the importance of inner child healing shouldn't make us scared to traumatize our kids. I know that this can also go too far, where we become extremely tough on ourselves, where we think that if we yell at our kids, we are going to traumatize them. It's absolutely not the case. And we need to remember that we will never, ever be perfect. And striving for perfection will never work, and it will only damage you even further. So just realize that you are a human, not a robot, and you will never come to a place where you don't yell at your kids ever again. Sometimes we do yell at our kids. We have to. I mean, you know, have you ever driven in a car with 3 kids at the back screaming? Of course you're going to yell at them, and it's okay. You know, you need to remember that for your children, they have, say, 18 years with you. It's the overall theme of your parenting that's important. It's not that you yell at them here and there. I really want to make that point very clear. So what matters also is that we pass down to our kids the skills to process their own emotions and traumas, because we won't always be able to get it right, and we won't always be able to shield them from everything. That's not what we should be striving for. So what really matters is to teach them those skills, and also spend a lot of time discussing things with them whenever things arise, or having a lot of discussions about what happens at schools, for example. Like I know that with my 8-year-old, it's helping her a lot to have all these discussions with me about her friendships, because what really matters is for them to have a cohesive story. I think a lot of the trauma happens when, as a child, you're not able to connect the dots and make sense of what's happening. You're feeling a lot of things, but no one was there explaining things to you at your level. So that was also another important point that I wanted to make. And the good news is that neuroscience also told us that the brain is moldable. It's this concept of neuroplasticity. So we actually have the power to rewire it and heal. And the even better news as parents is that you won't need to dig too deep to figure out what your issues are, because your beautiful children will make sure that they shine those triggers right in your face, and you won't be able to escape it. So this is the gift of parenting. Now I wanted to go through some of the signs that you have inner child wounds to heal. So some of them are: you get triggered a lot, you distract yourself a lot as a coping mechanism, whether it's addictions like drugs and alcohol, but also shopping and constantly catching up with friends so you don't have to be alone. You keep noticing unhealthy patterns in your relationships. You feel confused about who you are and what you want. You struggle to place and hold boundaries, or on the other hand, you are too rigid with your boundaries and you tend to want to control everyone and everything in your life. You struggle to speak up and assert yourself. You have an inability to say no. You struggle with prioritizing your needs without feeling guilty. You struggle with expressing your emotions. You feel guilt and shame a lot. You have poor self-esteem and self-respect. You tend to be very critical of yourself and have a lot of negative self-talk. So these are some of the examples that there's clearly a lot of things to heal. And you can see with all of this that basically 90% of the population needs to do inner child healing. And that's just, a reflection of the society we have been raised in and the society we live in. And that explains the mess we find ourselves in with the continuous rise in mental health issues today. So ultimately, all this points to me is a lack of self-love and your inner child needing a lot of acknowledgement, validation, and loving from you. And the good news is you are not broken. You are simply wounded, and guess what? Wounds heal. Now, I wanted to go through some common inner child wounds. Obviously, it's not all of them, but it's some of the ones that I've been able to think of. So let's start with the abandonment wound. So if you have that one, and I would go as far as saying that we probably have all of them, all the ones that I've listed. It's not this black and white, obviously, but this is just to give you direction. So signs that you have that wound are that you tend to be codependent in your relationships. You have a fear of being alone. In fact, you actually hate being alone, fear of being left in your relationship, or you threaten to leave when you have arguments with your partner, distracting yourself a lot, feeling that you need others to take care of you, people-pleasing, perfectionism, and people who have this wound tend to normally attract people who are emotionally unavailable. Another big one is the guilt wound. You feel sorry or bad way too often. You don't like to ask for things. You use guilt to manipulate, afraid to set boundaries, and normally attracts people who make them feel guilty. Another one is a trust wound. You are afraid of being hurt. You don't trust yourself, find ways to not trust people, feel insecure and need lots of external validation, doesn't feel safe, inability to express emotions, over-independence, normally attracts people who don't feel safe. And last but not least, a neglect wound, or what I would say is a lack of acknowledgement and validation in childhood, struggles to let things go, has low self-worth, gets angry easily, struggles to say no, represses emotions, fears being vulnerable, perfectionism, overworking, normally attracts people who don't appreciate them or make them feel seen. So again, these are just some examples. So hopefully you can see yourself in all, if not some, of these ones. Okay, so now for the juicy part, let's talk about how I actually went about it, because now I'm going to be talking about what has helped me and the reason why I'm able to share this with you guys is because I've really seen the fruits of my labor. I've actually really seen that has really helped me in myself and in my parenting, and I've become a different person. So hopefully what I'm sharing with you helps you as well. So the first big one is to reflect on your childhood. This is something that I didn't do until I actually had children, because I actually thought I was fine. Not to go into too much detail, but I was actually physically abused as a child. Obviously, I knew that it was not right and it affected me, but it's when I actually had my first child and I saw her as a baby, I was thinking, like, how could you do this to a child? And that really, really hit me, and it brought so many emotions to the surface. So it's about reflecting on, what you can remember from your childhood. And some of the questions that can help are, did I feel safe? Did I feel a sense of belonging in my family? Was I permitted to be myself? Do I still have any resentment coming from my childhood? What is my current relationship with my inner child like? So these are just some examples of questions you can ask yourself, and see if you can pinpoint what happened to your childhood with some of the behaviors you display today. When you reflect on your childhood, you will realize that you have wounds from your father, but you also have wounds from your mother. And that one actually took me a lot by surprise, personally. The wound from my father was obviously very obvious for me, but I didn't realize that I was also holding a lot of anger and resentment towards my mom because she never left. So just sharing this example as well, because it took me by such surprise, and I actually think for me it was the biggest wound of all. A second step that I took was to observe and understand my triggers with my kids. So in video 2, I suggested that you start a practice of reflecting after each day. So at the end of each day, taking a journal and reflecting on what happened that day. And a good thing to do is to reflect on anytime your kids triggered you that day, so anytime you yelled, or obviously you know what I mean by triggered, it's when you get really, really angry. And whether it's your kids or anyone for that matters, it could be your partner. And see what you uncover. What did you feel? Did you feel unsafe, and why? Was it actually warranted to feel unsafe at that time during that day? And try to see how this connects to your childhood. So those 2 points are, really just reflecting. We're not really getting into the healing yet. It's just trying to understand and build that cohesive story of connecting the dots. Because I feel like with healing, it really helps to understand what we're actually trying to heal. So the next step that I took then was to do inner child meditation. And that really, really helped me. And by inner child meditation, I mean some of those meditations where you go into a meditative state, and these are guided meditations, and you go at a specific event that you remember that was traumatic, and you are there, you as an adult, so the Anna me as an adult was comforting the Anna at that age. So you are there for her, and you talk to her, and you console her, and you tell her that she's loved, that none of it is her fault, that everything's going to be okay, and you visualize in your head how you are, hugging her and consoling her and talking to her. Be warned that usually triggers a lot of tears, but that's when you know that it's working and that you are healing. Another step that I took was to pour a lot of self-love into me and talking to my inner child. And I've shared that in previous videos, but basically what I mean by that is that every time I used to be triggered, and for me, a big trigger is screams. When my kids are screaming, I can't take it. I mean, obviously, I think, when multiple children are screaming in the car, it's completely normal reaction to not like it. But what I mean by that is like even when my kids were playing, it used to really trigger me because it used to bring me back to those moments in childhood. So when I used to get triggered, I used to manage to pause, which I've mentioned that before, I've only been able to actually have that pause through meditation, and pull myself and coach myself in that moment. So in that moment, I'd be putting my hand on my heart and saying to myself, you are safe, you are loved, everything's okay, and breathing very calmly at the same time. So, and that, when I say pouring so much love, I used to do multiple times a day, constantly. Because that's what your inner child needs. Your inner child, when it gets triggered and activated like this, it needs a lot of validation and love. And the last thing that I think helped me as well is to nurture that inner child. So, things like eating food from your childhood that you found really comforting. I found a chocolate that I really liked, that I hadn't had for since I was a child, actually, a specific brand of chocolate. And just having it, just enjoying it, and when you have that food or that chocolate, it brings you back to that child. And overall, just doing things that you used to love as a child, looking at photos of yourself as a child or videos from your childhood, and watching your favorite memories when you were a child. So basically, all that is to spend time with your inner child, because that part of you, that wounded part of you, has basically been suppressed and denied for so long, and that's why you have all these triggers. So doing all these things help you validate them instead of suppressing them. And lastly, an important point that I want to make is that you don't actually need to confront your parents to heal your inner child. I know that it's a misconception that a lot of people have, and it's something I was really confused about for a long time. But healing your inner child happens on your own. No one else can do it for you. And dragging your parents into it will most likely make things worse, because they will probably be in denial. I mean, it's really confronting when your own kids come and say how badly you've treated them. So you don't need to do that. A big caveat, though, is that obviously if your family is currently still toxic and not treating you well, or not treating your own kids well, then absolutely you need to put those boundaries. It's something you need to do, because you need to stand up for yourself and for your inner child at that point. It's not because you share blood with some people that you need to accept anything. And it's a big part of healing, putting those boundaries as an adult. So to end this video, I wanted to discuss how you know you've made progress in your healing and you've healed. The first one is that you no longer blame your parents for your childhood and for your wounds. And obviously it's a process. At the beginning of starting this healing journey, you will have a lot of anger and resentment. It's normal. I mean, you know, that's what healing is. You're bringing all these emotions to the surface to be seen, acknowledged, and healed, right? But on the other side of this healing journey, you will come full circle and actually have forgiveness and compassion for your parents with this full understanding that, you know, they did the best they could. And that actually frees you. It's not necessarily forgiveness to make them feel better. You don't need to actually talk to them about it. It's for yourself. You know, it's releasing this heaviness in your body. The second thing is that you actually see proof in your life that you're making progress because you get triggered a lot less and your relationships are improving. And the last thing is that you feel different on the inside. You actually feel like a different person. You feel so much more grounded and so much more at peace. And overall, you have a deeper understanding of who you are and you have so much more love and compassion for yourself. And obviously, I want to make something clear is that inner child healing takes time. It's a process. And also, I don't necessarily believe that we will be able to heal all of it in this lifetime, but you will be able to heal huge chunks of it, which I've now done. And that's all that matters because you will see that your life and how you feel is just completely different. When you get through those big chunks, they no longer rule your life. That's it for today. I really hope that this video is helpful and it assists you in your healing journey. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave me a comment and I'll see you next time.